All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. A lot of news going around with Dallas. We're going to get to the latest Micah Parsons situation, new wrinkles, new stuff unfolding there. A lot of great stuff happening in training camp. We've got a new potential starter, steal of the draft potentially emerging. Guy really making a name for himself. But let's get started with what we usually do. It's a little palate cleanser, get things going. Now, normally I like to start with like a stat of the day or a chart of the day, but there's some news that happened yesterday. It was really disappointing to see. I'm going to go ahead and pull up this right here. This is courtesy of Ian Rappaport. You can see it. It talks about the Chargers star offensive tackle Rashawn Slater, who was carted off during practice, is feared to have suffered a torn patellar tendon. Sources tell the insiders he'll have an MRI, but he's facing a season-ending injury. All reports now are pretty much confirmed he's out for the season. This is what really sucks about training camp. And obviously, this is a Cowboys show, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about Slater and the Chargers, but this is one of the real disappointing things. Cowboys fans, we've dealt with this with some injuries during training camp. This time of year, the anticipation runs high. We're all excited for football, and then a star player, really any player, goes down with a season-ending injury, especially when you consider Slater just signed a massive extension with the Los Angeles Chargers. You better believe Slater's devastated. The Chargers are devastated. The owner, GM of the Los Angeles Chargers are devastated. This is one of the things that can make negotiations and dollars so hard when you're trying to get these extensions worked out, is that everyone knows it. The player knows he's one injury away. The GM knows it. The owners know it. The coaches know it. Everyone knows this happens. People don't like to talk about it because it's really terrible. It's dark, but it's a reality. So anytime you hear things about negotiations and contract extensions, you see stories like this, and you can see why both sides can be a little apprehensive. We're all rooting for Slater. He's a great player. Hopefully he'll come back in 2026 and continue his great career. All right, getting into the Cowboys news, let's pull up this first report here, courtesy of Joseph Hoyt at Joe J. Hoyt, who's a good follow on X. I recommend him. He's talking about Zion Childress, a defensive back, rookie undrafted free agent out of Kentucky, who is just exploding in training camp. Hoyt posted, Childress figured the Cowboys would have low expectations for him. That was until Brian Schottenheimer told him he'd have a chance at the nickel spot. He told the wrong guy that because I take advantage of every opportunity, and so far he is. In fact, if you go into our next report here on that same line, this is courtesy of Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He's got a little video clip online. You can check it out. It's just a random highlight from training camp. But just the focus of the post here. Here's Zion Childress not only running with the ones, running with a first string, but also batting a ball down on a blitz. The rookie undrafted free agent is starting to find himself in some of the top of the depth chart conversations. You talk about a guy no one saw coming. I certainly didn't see him coming, right? This was a guy that when he was signed by Dallas as an undrafted free agent, I was like, okay, camp body, right? Kentucky, a lot of experience, played a lot of football, but if you look at his numbers and look at his performance, you talk to Kentucky fans, you talk to SEC fans, you're kind of like, he was kind of a decent player. Nothing special. Didn't really seem NFL caliber. Good guy to have on your roster in the SEC, right? Did some good things from mid to below average SEC school, the Kentucky Wildcats. But to make an NFL team, to be a starter on an NFL team, not going to happen. Not a draftable guy, maybe a camp body at best. And when he was signed by Dallas, that's when I thought, he's just a camp body to bring in some depth on special teams and safety for the preseason, like all teams do, right? But all he has done with his opportunities is just excel. He's crushing it. And it's important to note that he's running with the ones, running with the first string. That really matters. During this time of year, training camp and preseason, coaches will shuffle in players with the ones just to put in guys to get them some experience with the first string. Usually they put backups in there, right, to, hey, if an injury happens, we need you to be ready. So they may have your backup corner run with the first string, or they may have a third string rookie running back run with the first string. Just that way they're prepared, they get some reps. They may also put guys in there to say, hey, how are they going to do against the first string? They've been doing really well when they've been competing against the twos. Let's see how they do against the ones. That happens all the time. But for an undrafted free agent, a camp body to come in and get opportunities from the coaching staff with the first string, that means they view him at the very least as a strong backup candidate. This is no longer a camp body, folks. This is a guy who's a viable backup, a viable depth piece, and could be competing for some serious playing time. Now, look, you're talking about one of the stories of the offseason. We find undrafted free agents, but usually the guys that do well, they were really productive in college. For example, Tony Romo, but he went to a D1AA school, right? Or they have some physical flaw or whatever it may be. They were injuries, whatever's the case. Not the situation with Childress. He played a lot of football, good competition, good SEC, right? Got a lot of attention in terms of a lot of media focus on that conference. Despite that, he went undrafted. And you're like, okay, he's just not that good a football player. But he has shown up day one in Cowboys training camp and done an absolutely phenomenal job. And it's everybody, whether it's Hoyt, whether it's Schottenheimer, whether it's Harris. everybody. And we talked about him a little bit last week, doing better and better. He is trending in the right direction. He is a guy to watch. He is, to me, the most surprising player, the most surprising rookie emerging in training camp. He could be a week 1 starter for the Dallas Cowboys before it's all said and done. And I don't think that's necessarily an indictment of some of the other guys competing, doing some good things. Now, they do have some injuries in the secondary. That's very real. But I think it speaks more to what Childress is doing in his own right. Phenomenal job by this young player. All right, let's get into our next report. This is 2 reports here. We kind of put 2 in 1 here, talking about my favorite rookies so far in the Cowboys draft class. That's linebacker Shemar James. Nick Harris posted, "It's been a good day for rookie linebacker Shemar James." And another good reporter, Calvin Watkins, he also posted. So we got corroborating evidence here. Love to see that. Shemar James is having a nice physical practice today. You know, we're starting to see Shemar James stack some days together. And that's one of the things I talked about yesterday and a few days before that, is that some of these mid-round rookies, these late-round rookies, undrafted free agents, early in camp, they're not getting a lot of reps, a lot of opportunities. Now that they're getting more chances, more plays, we're going to start to see the wheat separate from the chaff here in terms of some of these mid to late-round guys, undrafted free agents, that are legit ballers, legit players. We talked about Childress a second ago. Shemar James is following that exact same path. I've been very high on him through this entire process. It's a very good, young, athletic linebacking group in the Dallas Cowboys. I think Shemar James only adds to the list. I love what he's doing. Definitely got to watch over the preseason. All right, next report here. This is courtesy of Kyle Yalmans. Just some overall camp notes and practice notes from yesterday's practice. Injuries, Ferguson, Blue, and Shepley all left practice. Steele left but returned. We'll get to Jaydon Blue in just a second. He hurt his ankle. It doesn't seem to be bad. We'll get into the details there. Good day for the interior D-line. Oso Digizua and Solomon Thomas were fantastic today. Yeah, it's one of these things in training camp. I wouldn't, way too much into individual players or position groups having good days or bad days. Sometimes the offense or the defense are trying out a new personnel package or new set of plays. They're installing something new, whereas maybe the defense is, just working on stuff they've been working on the entire camp in terms of strategies and schemes. So your defense has a good day. So don't really focus too much on, the D-line did great today. The receivers did great today. Whatever it may be. If it's a position group, that's usually a function of personnel and scheme timing. Let's focus on individual players. I say that all the time. Training camp and preseason is about individual players. If you focus on position group or overall team performance, you can get a lot of false positives, a lot of false negatives for how good or bad the team is. Again, on the same line, liked what the safety depth showed. Clark was flying around while Smith was active too. Again, same kind of thing. Individual performances are great. Elijah Clark flying around a little bit. We talked about Childress. This is a safety position, defensive back, even though Childress is getting a lot of reps at the nickel position, nickel corner. I think these young DBs are taking advantage of these opportunities. That's good to see. But again, we got to focus on the individual level and see what plays they make over the course of the rest of the camp and preseason. Here's an important individual note. Nate Thomas was impressive today. Appears he took coaching from Rams practice. Yeah, he had a rough Rams practice going against Jared Verse. Understandable. First time against live competition in, 800 days in terms of opposition. Verse is a great player. There's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises. Would expect it. He's a backup left tackle coming off an injury. He's had a good camp, though, and he seems to be getting better and better, and he's gone up against some good rushers, obviously Verse, but also the Cowboys guys as well. Guyton being ready for week 1 is still up in the air. The Cowboys need a good swing tackle regardless when Guyton returns. Nate Thomas is quietly emerging as that kind of guy. I think he's one of these steals of last year's draft who's really emerging to be a key cog in this Cowboys offense. I'm really excited by his development, and this is where Schottenheimer, Adams, Riley, the entire new staff deserves a lot of credit. Eberflus too on defense. They're doing a really good job developing these young guys, giving them opportunities. Now we'll have to see how good they actually become, but the trend is definitely the trend is definitely a lot of these young Cowboys' friend at this point. They're all getting better, improving their game, taking coaching. Speaks to a new culture, right? Under Mike McCarthy, I felt a lot of it was, hey, we are who we are. We're gonna throw our best players out there and let the chips fall where they may. Dan Quinn was different. Dan Quinn was a lot about developing guys. We saw that. On offense, I think not so much. We're seeing the new Schottenheimer era take that kind of mentality, put it on the offensive side of the ball as well. It's good to see. Milton's best practice, talking about the quarterback, but still working on adding touch. Yeah, nothing against Kyle Yalmans here, but I'm, you're a reporter, beat reporter. What do you know about quarterback touch? What about you know about that kind of stuff? You have no idea what was called in the huddle. You don't know about the scheme. You don't know anything about what was coached to him individually. So let's dial back on the stylistic criticism. People like to look at that, the quarterback position, and we all think we're experts. You don't know what was going on in the film room. You don't know what was going on in individual drills. They may have said no touch today, and they say, hey, throw it on a line today. So I take with what Yalman says here with that big honking grain of salt. Screen game to Turpin was used a few times. Yeah, just a recurring theme that Schottenheimer, Adams, they're using Turpin a lot this season in a lot of different ways. That's great to see. All right, moving right along to the Jaydon Blue injury. This is obviously pretty important. This is courtesy of Brandon Lohr. Jaydon Blue, after practice, told the Star Telegram he suffered an ankle injury and that he is fine. However, availability for his preseason debut against the Los Angeles Rams is uncertain. We'll have to see if he actually plays or not. Right now, it looks like it's leaning no, but that could change day to day. I'm honestly not worried about rushing him too quick into the fold. There's 2 more preseason games, a lot of training camp, a lot of practices to go. The fact that it's a minor injury and avoided anything serious, that's very important. Look, Javonte Williams looks like a really good player in terms of being really, if we're going to be totally honest, Javonte Williams is the best running back the Cowboys have had going back to last season in terms of what they had in camp and how they performed. Williams is doing a lot of good things. He was obviously very good at time with Denver. We saw him, of course, when they came to Dallas in 2021. He had a lot of really nice runs. He's a really hard physical runner. Is he a Pro Bowl? Is he a star? Is he that kind of player? I don't think so, but I think he's more than a competent starter that you can work with as their starting running back as you integrate Jaydon Blue into the offense more and more. I think that's what the Cowboys should plan on doing. I think that's what they are doing, and because of that, don't rush Blue back, right? You don't need him to be the week 1 starter. It'd be different if you felt he needed a lot of live reps because he's going to get 30 carries week 1. No, you're going to slowly integrate him into the offense. Don't rush him back. It looks like they're taking the smart approach here, which I think is obviously the right move to make. All right, next story here. This is where things get very, very spicy. This is courtesy of Shan Sheriff at 105.3 The Fan. Hearing Jerry and Micah met for over 4 hours last night. That would be August 6th, so that would be not last night, but the night before. It seems conversations have started again. There are also reports that David Mulugeta, Micah Parsons' agent, was not involved in the meeting. Parsons did not attend the practice yesterday. He was at the facility. They said he was just dealing with back tightness. They said nothing to see there, nothing of any importance. No contract negotiations are going on. So what we're seeing right now is that contract negotiations are going on and that Micah Parsons is talking to Jerry Jones. We talked about this before and we brought it up yesterday, and we'll kind of rehash this a little bit when we go and address the comments here in a little bit from yesterday's video. But it's very clear that Jerry Jones, because of what he did in terms of negotiation, depending on how you view it with Parsons, when it was just him and Parsons, handshake deal, handshake agreement, whatever that is, Jones just wants to deal with Parsons, right? So if Mulugeta can basically tell Parsons what to say and we can get Jerry Jones and Micah Parsons in a room and hash things out, I think we'll get there. I think the trend right now is that the Cowboys will extend Micah Parsons. That's the way it always was going to be. When you hear that they're meeting and talking, it's either heading in a right direction, which I think it is, or it's heading south very, very quickly. I think at this point, because the Cowboys have the ability, if they want to hold Parsons' rights through 2027. His contract this year, franchise tag in 26, franchise tag in 27. Parsons knows that. David Mulugeta knows that. Everybody knows that. Nobody is giving up a massive amount of draft capital and giving Parsons a mega deal, especially what happened with Rashawn Slater. Everyone's going to be a little gun shy about that whole situation now in terms of potential trading partners, even though Dallas, of course, has said we're not going to trade Parsons. So the fact that the demand is going to drop a little bit, I think Parsons and his team knows that. Jerry Jones knows that. Everybody knows that. Get them in a room together. Let's figure this out. I think we're going in the right direction here. All right. Final report here. Here's where it's just a little interesting little context. So this is from Adam Schefter. He said, more about the Steelers' 4-time All-Pro defensive tackle Cameron Hayward seeking a raise in a defensive market that has experienced a reset this offseason. He's not fully participating in practice yet this summer as he awaits a restructured contract. He reportedly wants a pretty big raise. He's at the end of his career. He's in his mid-30s. I highlight this just to bring this up because if you focus in a bubble, a Cowboys media bubble, which frankly can be all of media because all anyone ever wants to talk about is the Cowboys, you see that other teams have contract disputes. You see other teams have personnel disputes. Now, the Steelers have not been a model franchise over the past 6, 7, 8 years, right? No playoff win since 2016. But they're at least portrayed in the media from an ownership perspective, from a GM perspective, as one of the better franchises. But here we have a contract dispute, a big one. One of their stars, a team captain, he's not fully practicing, right? He's not putting his time, he's not putting all of his effort into it, right? If this was the Dallas Cowboys, this would be all the news all the time, and we'd see a meltdown over Cowboys media. We'd see a meltdown on ESPN and Fox Sports. So I just throw this out here just to give a little context, guys, to understand when you hear all the negativity going around in Dallas, at Dallas, A lot of it is warranted and very, very fair. But you also have to understand the Cowboys, being the Cowboys, attract a lot more of it from the outside media, because we literally have a team like the Steelers that's made the playoffs last season. They've got Aaron Rodgers. They're going all in this season, and no one is talking about this story. Their team captain isn't practicing. That would be just bonkers headlines. Imagine if Dak Prescott was sitting out practice, right? It would be the biggest story across the National Football League. That's essentially what's happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers. No one's talking about it. Again, Steelers are a marquee franchise, but it's nowhere near the media draw of Dallas. It's important to understand when you see the negativity, you see the news, a lot of it is just the Cowboys being the Cowboys. They're going to get more attention on them. Doesn't mean they can't be criticized and shouldn't be, and a lot of times they deserve it, but that context, I think, is really important. All right, let's get into the comments yesterday. A lot of great comments, so I just wanted to get through the news, and before I started going through these with you guys, there's a really, really good list of stuff here. This first one is from Dan DeTola. He had 2 comments. I'll break them down kind of back to back. He said, Mozzie makes the roster or no. I think it's time to wish him well and let him find greener pastures. I agree. I don't think he does. Maybe they try and keep him on just because he has experience playing as a backup, but I think they cut him. I think it's just not going to work in Dallas, like Kaiir Elam in Buffalo, now in Dallas, needs greener pastures, change of scenery. I think it's time to let him go. Dan also went on to post, I think the handshake deal is a thing. I think Micah should have called his agent and said, these are the numbers, and now call Jerry and iron out the particulars. Yeah, yesterday I asked the question because there was some commentary, online and in the media about, well, why is Jerry Jones just doing handshake deals in person? Like, why are we doing business that way? That's not how business is done. And I was like, well, that's how I bought and sold the 2 houses I bought and the 1 house I sold. That's how I've done it. That's how I've handled promotions and negotiations, right? You agree to a deal, and then the contracts and offer sheets or whatever come after the fact, and it's all the same terms that you just talked about. But I put this out there, so maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm from a different era, maybe I'm just out of just luck, haven't interacted in a new way of doing things. Based on what Dan is saying here and based on what other people said in the comment section, that a lot of people are like, hey, no, handshake deals are still a thing. So again, not excusing Jerry Jones at all. We talked about it a lot, that he used a strong arm tactic. But again, Micah Parsons and David Mulligetta should have, after that meeting, literally just gone straight to paperwork, straight to offer sheets. It sounds like Mulligetta tried to intercede a little bit to get a little extra money for himself / Parsons in that deal. So that's basically what's happening there. Let's see here. This is from Karmic Patina. Posted, McCarthy had no chance of doing anything significant. He never had any semblance of a run game, and his quarterback was chosen for him by economics. COVID season didn't count. If Mike had this year's roster, he would get them into the tournament again. Last year might as well just not have existed. It's an interesting point, but the question with Mike McCarthy in Dallas wasn't that he couldn't get them to the postseasons. He did 3 straight seasons. The question with McCarthy is sort of like Wade Phillips in a way, where it's, all right, what's the future, right? You were brought in to push the team over the top, right? Jason Garrett, the criticism of him was they were competitive and talented. They needed a Super Bowl winner, a playoff winner to win those big games. McCarthy came in, they could win the big game. So if you were brought in to do a task, like you are in any job, like if you're brought in to increase sales at a business by 20% or to cut costs by 10% or whatever it is, and you come in and you cut costs by 5%, you say, hey man, I cut costs. Your boss is going to be like, hey man, great job, but I'm paying you. I brought you in because you could cut costs by 10%. That's what we agreed we needed from you. You didn't live up to that standard. So the standard for Mike McCarthy, fair or not, was deep postseason runs, deep postseason success. That didn't happen, which makes sense why they move on trying to change, right? A coach, a player, everybody is evaluated against the expectations, right? Dak Prescott's performance is a much higher bar than he was as a rookie, right? When he came out as a backup 4th round pick, people are like, can you be competent, right? Now, so many years later, he's paid all the bucks. He's the captain. He's the leader of the franchise, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. Now the expectations are so much higher, right? Your performance is a function of your expectation, meeting or exceeding it. Mike McCarthy, fair or not, had high expectations when Jerry Jones brought him into the fold. He didn't meet them. I think that's the reason why they moved on, and I think it makes sense to me. Let's see here. This is from Lewis Kelly, SM6KC, excuse me. This business, and if you have a chance to make a great deal, put it in writing, and in the wood you bring up injuries and I guess he was saying, why would you bring up injuries when you hurt on the field? That was BS. Talking about Jerry Jones, paying a lot of guys money, hey, I'm going to pay him a lot of money. Maybe he's not even going to be on the field. And I understand that feels BS, and it is tough. It's a jerk move. It's a mean move. It's just not a good move. It's a nasty move from Jerry Jones to do that. But we just saw that happen at the beginning with Rashawn Slater. The Chargers paid him a lot of money, a huge contract. They're trying to win a championship. They've got all the pieces in place, young team, great quarterback, new coach, good culture, good vibes all around, and now he's out for the season. No fault of his own, right? Injuries happen. But the reality is, as an owner, as a GM, that's going to be part of your calculus. And it's nasty, it's tough, it's mean, it's brutal, but it's something you always got to think about. It sucks. I hate it, right? I absolutely hate it. But you have to do that. You have to be willing to think like that if you're going to be an owner or in a GM. If you can't think like that, you don't belong in the business. That's just the reality in terms of leading a franchise. Howie, and up in Philadelphia, his GM, Brett Veach in Kansas City, they think like that. They're very brutal. They've done that numerous times. It doesn't get the publicity again because it's not Dallas. Bill Belichick was very brutal. He got that publicity. But you have to be willing to do that to be successful. That's just the reality. It sucks. I hate it. But like I said, it's just the way it works in football. This is from Brienne1063. Seems to me that Jerry and Micah did the heavy lifting on the terms, but how does an agent justify his cut? He has to tweak things or make it where he is needed equals complicate things. Remember, Pickens also has the same agent. Exactly correct. I call this in my day job. A lot of people have to justify their existence, right? If they're not involved in a deal where theoretically they should be involved, and I think any one of us that has a day job, you're working on a team, you're moving things in your corporate America or your small business, whatever it may be, or you're moving things in a good direction, and then some guy on the outside has to interject because he's got to justify his existence, and now things get throttled down and all messed up, right? I think that's what happened with David Mulligeta. He had to justify his existence. He had to justify to Mike Parsons why Parsons is giving him at least 10% of his salary off the top. That's why he interjected himself in the negotiations. Again, just my opinion. I wasn't in the room, wasn't involved in discussions, but that's what it looks like to me. I agree with you, Brienne, 100%. Talking about Dallas being better or worse last year, next comment is from Jared Goldberg, 4904. He posted, probably a better team than last year. I don't think they got worse at any position. Maybe the retirement of Zach Martin. It's going to be interesting if they actually play up to the expectations. That'll determine it. Yeah, I agree with you. It's the same kind of point I made yesterday in terms of assuming whatever injuries happen, as long as it's not catastrophic. If you look across the entire roster, where are they worse, right? They won 7 games, and based on the analytics, you could say they were really a 6-win team. That's a 6-7-win team, and they've gotten better everywhere. Assuming Dak Prescott plays the whole season, they're better at running back, much better at wide receiver. Offensive line, they certainly aren't worse. Beebe should be better year 2. Aging Zach Martin, replaced with a first-round pick, could be better, right? Guyton year 2 if he's healthy. They should be better offensive line. Defensive line, adding Azaraku, Williams, Fowler back into the fold, right? They should be a little bit better. Corner is a big question mark, but again, they got in some good guys. Elam as an addition seems to be a decent depth piece. We got Childress making some moves. If Diggs can be healthy, there's a lot to like there. Savone Revel could be a guy the second half of the season. Linebacking core to me is a big question mark, but Eberflus, linebacker kind of guy. We got guys like Shemar James, Leofeld year 2. Basically what I'm saying here is, and I agree with you 100%, where are they worse? They won 6-11 games last year, and they've gotten better in a lot of positions. So you can make an argument that they're not significantly better, and they're only going to win maybe 8 games, and that's sort of what I'm feeling, 8-9, just missed the postseason. That's kind of my vibe. But it's hard to think, assuming wheels don't fall off for some weird reason, they don't get significantly worse. And if Schottenheimer and his scheme and his leadership provide more value than McCarthy did, maybe they could perform to the positive on expectations. We'll have to see, of course, but I think when you just look at the roster from an unbiased perspective, you can say they're probably better than they were last year, and they only won 7 games. So you would assume at least a little improvement. Again, have to prove it on the field, of course, but just again, they look better on paper than they were last year. This is from @StevenVanover, a great commenter. Always appreciate what he puts. He posted, if I may, the issue is not that a handshake/eye contact is a way to get a deal done. It's that Jerry refuses to deal with the agent. He is not returning his calls nor even acknowledging his agency of representing his client. This is a blatant violation of the CBA and a mind-blown moment that the league is letting Jerry get away with. Get away with his ideal with the principal's tactics. Micah has every right to legal representation and has chosen to exercise that right. It needs to be respected. Reminds me of the old urban legend where Lombardi traded his all-pro center Jim Ringo to the Eagles the moment he learned Ringo had obtained an agent. Jerry is living in the wrong era. Yeah, I kind of wondered if that was the case, but I asked that question yesterday, and we got a few comments saying, no, deals are still being done by handshakes and, by agreement and eye contact and in person. And then you get the lawyers and contracts people involved. Now, I will say there have been some people replying in the comments section saying, no, it's this big a deal. It's got to be in a contract. It's just too much money. So maybe that's where the sort of disconnect occurs. But when you look at Jerry Jones, he may be living in the wrong era, but you look at Micah Parsons, David Mulligetta, they've got to also understand that they're dealing with the guy in the wrong era. In the same way, Jerry Jones has to realize who he's talking to, Mulligetta has to realize who he's working with. So there has to be a meeting of the minds here. I think it's going to happen. In terms of the violation of the CBA, the way I understood it, and I am open to a fact check, I am not a lawyer, I'm not an expert on the CBA at all. I thought that a player could not sign a deal, physically sign on the line that is dotted without some form of agency legal representation, right? A player couldn't do it without having some lawyer on his behalf, the way, you have a right to an attorney in a case, not literally like that verbatim, but that kind of mindset. That's how I thought the CBA was written and handled. I could be wrong, but I thought that was literally how it was handled. Because we see all the times where players have weird representatives like their uncles or their mothers or something like that. It's not always a certified agency, but I'm open to a fact check. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I just think it's the spirit of the rule is that you're supposed to use an agent, but it doesn't necessarily by regulation, by rule in the CBA have to be an agent. But again, I'm open to a fact check. All right, one of my favorite comments just to end on this here, talking about at the beginning of yesterday's show, I said, listen, we need to give CeeDee Lamb his flowers. He's a great player. John Turman, 6872, posted, no, don't give anybody flowers. All right, good comment. All right, that's enough of the comments from yesterday. A lot of stuff coming around. Of course, we're getting close to the first preseason game against the Rams. A lot of rookies, a lot of young guys to keep an eye on. Like I've said a few times now, we're going to have a lot of film reviews coming on the other side, breaking down all 22 footage of this rookies. So please stay tuned for all that. We're going to have more great content, more news as we work forward on this Daily Cowboy Show. Again, put your comments, thoughts on anything in the comment section below. You guys are really good with your ideas. I learn from you. I love the feedback. I love the conversation. That's my favorite part of doing this. So keep that coming. But until next time, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.